Julia enjoyed the quiet peace of her Jacksonville home office until a glaring email suddenly shattered the calm. The message claimed her primary account was completely frozen, demanding an immediate transfer to avoid permanent loss. The words were highly aggressive, filled with heavy pressure and shaming language. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, ready to comply with the urgent demands. But then her eyes caught something very strange. A dark, unexplained shadow lingered in the static cover photo of the sender. It was a physical impossibility for a flat digital badge. Her heart raced as the manufactured urgency fought against her instinct to simply pause. The late afternoon sun cast long, quiet shadows across the wooden desk in the Jacksonville home office. Julia sat in her favorite chair, enjoying the peaceful routine of checking her daily emails. At 68, the retired store manager valued her independence and the quiet order of her fixed-income life. The house was completely silent, save for the soft hum of the laptop fan and the distant rustle of oak leaves outside the window. She clicked through a few routine messages, feeling relaxed and entirely in control of her afternoon. The gentle rhythm of her daily tasks always brought her a deep sense of comfort. Suddenly, a glaring new message popped up at the top of the inbox. The subject line was written in aggressive, capitalized letters that seemed to shout from the screen. Julia leaned closer to the glowing monitor. The text claimed her primary financial account was completely frozen. It demanded an immediate transfer to a secure holding server to avoid permanent loss of her life savings. The words were harsh, filled with heavy pressure and shaming language that questioned her loyalty and responsibility. It felt like a direct attack on her decades of careful financial planning. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. The harsh light of the monitor illuminated her face, making the quiet room feel suddenly claustrophobic and tense. The message insisted the action had to be completed right now, warning of irreversible consequences if she hesitated. Her pulse quickened. The manufactured urgency was designed to force a mistake, fighting against her natural instinct to simply pause and think. The aggressive tone tried to override her careful nature. As she stared at the demanding text, her eyes drifted to the small sender profile picture at the top of the email. It was supposed to be an official digital badge, meant to project authority and trust. But something was wrong. A strange, unexplained shadow fell across the lower edge of the emblem. It was a physical impossibility for a flat digital image. The shadow told more than the pixel knew. It was a tiny flaw, but it stood out like a beacon in the sea of aggressive text. Julia stopped breathing for a second. The heavy pressure in the room seemed to shift. She remembered her husband Ethan always saying to pause when things felt rushed. The visual clue completely contradicted the official tone of the message. Her heart beat faster, but her hands moved away from the keyboard. She sat back in her chair, staring at the impossible shadow on the screen, realizing the urgent scenario was a fabricated lie. The glowing monitor continued to flash its demands, but Julia remained perfectly still, caught between the digital trap and her own careful awareness. Julia closed the laptop lid with a soft, definitive click, instantly breaking the visual hold of the glowing screen. The harsh, artificial light vanished, leaving the quiet home office in the gentle, natural glow of the late afternoon sun. She took a deep, steadying breath, letting her tense shoulders drop away from her ears. The manufactured urgency of the aggressive email still echoed in her mind, but the physical distance from the monitor helped clear the heavy fog of anxiety. She needed to step away from the digital world and ground herself in reality. She picked up her empty ceramic coffee mug and walked out of the office, her footsteps muffled by the soft hallway carpet. The living room was warm, inviting, and filled with golden sunlight that highlighted the familiar patterns of her floral sofa. Ethan sat in his favorite worn armchair by the large window, a thick paperback resting comfortably in his hands. He looked up as she entered, his kind eyes immediately reading the slight tension lingering in her posture. He knew her expressions well, recognizing the subtle signs of digital stress. Julia set her mug on the wooden side table and sat on the edge of the sofa. She explained the aggressive email, the harsh demands, and the strange, impossible shadow lingering on the sender's digital badge. Ethan listened quietly, carefully marking his page before setting the book aside. He kept his voice steady and calm, acting as a grounding anchor in the quiet room. His presence alone was enough to lower her heart rate. "The screen demanded I act right now," Julia said, exhaling slowly as the last remnants of the digital panic faded away. Ethan nodded, his expression deeply reassuring. "We always check the back of the card, never the email," he replied gently. The lingering digital urgency fought against the quiet physical reality of her safe home, but Ethan's steady presence easily won out. Julia felt her hard-earned independence returning. She did not need to click any suspicious links or follow the aggressive instructions. She stood up and walked to her leather purse resting on the dining table. She pulled out her physical bank card, running her thumb over the raised numbers. The plastic felt solid and familiar in her hand, a stark contrast to the fleeting, deceptive nature of the email. She traced the embossed letters, feeling the physical proof of her identity and her hard work. She would find the real customer service number printed on the back, completely ignoring the fake contact details in the message. The true test of the threat was not the email itself, but her ability to physically disconnect and seek the truth. She looked closely at the card, ready to make the call on her own terms, but suddenly paused as she noticed a small, unfamiliar scratch near the edge. Julia stood in the quiet living room, her thumb tracing the raised, slightly faded numbers on her physical bank card. The late morning sun warmed her shoulders, casting a gentle glow across the floral sofa. But a sudden, sharp chime from the home office shattered the peace. The laptop screen had woken up on its own. Through the open doorway, she could see the harsh red glow reflecting off the pale walls. A new message was flashing aggressively. It demanded immediate action in exactly 10 minutes to prevent permanent account closure. The bold red text pulsed with a heavy, manufactured urgency. Her heart raced against her ribs. She looked down at the plastic card in her trembling hand. The printed numbers looked slightly worn from years of use, causing a brief, terrifying spike of doubt. What if the physical card was outdated? What if the glowing screen was actually telling the truth? The digital pressure fought hard to break her careful resolve. She stared at the small scratch near the edge of the plastic, wondering if it meant the card was compromised. The aggressive chime sounded again, louder this time, echoing down the hallway. Then a soft knock sounded at the open front door. Julia turned to see Carter, her neighbor from next door, holding a small basket of fresh tomatoes from his garden. He took one look at her pale face and tense posture. He stepped inside, his steady presence immediately grounding the room. He did not ask about the flashing screen. He simply offered a quiet, friendly hello, setting the small basket on the entryway table. The bright red tomatoes looked nothing like the harsh red warning on the screen. His calm demeanor broke the heavy digital spell. Julia remembered the impossible shadow in the static image. It had warned her that the screen was lying. She took a deep breath, letting the tight knot in her chest loosen. Carter smiled gently, noting that nothing good in life ever required rushing. She nodded, feeling the heavy pressure finally lift away. The red flashing light from the office no longer felt like a real threat, just a noisy distraction. She looked down at the trusted physical number in her hand, ready to make the call on her own terms. She walked slowly toward the kitchen counter, where her simple landline phone rested. Julia picked up the simple landline receiver from the kitchen counter. The plastic felt cool and solid against her palm. It was a stark contrast to the glowing digital trap in the other room. Behind her, the laptop screen continued its aggressive, flashing red display. The harsh light spilled into the hallway, painting long, distorted shadows on the floor. It demanded her immediate attention. It screamed that time was running out. It demanded panic and immediate compliance. Julia kept her back to the glowing monitor, refusing to let the artificial light dictate her actions. She looked down at the physical bank card in her left hand. Her thumb found the customer service number printed clearly on the back. She pressed the buttons on the landline keypad. One by one, the digits echoed in the quiet kitchen, each press a deliberate rejection of the digital panic. The flashing screen demanded panic. The trusted phone line delivered a steady, reliable rhythm. She waited through a brief, calm hold music, listening to the gentle melody that felt like a shield against the harsh red light. The digital pressure fought hard to break her focus. The physical reality of the phone grounded her completely. Finally, a crisp, automated voice answered. It asked for her account verification. Julia spoke her details clearly. Her voice was steady and plain. The system processed the information. The silence stretched for a few seconds, feeling heavier than the flashing lights in the other room. Then, the automated voice spoke again. The system confirmed her account was completely secure and fully active. Julia smiled softly, knowing the impossible shadow in the static image had been right all along. The digital trap was entirely fake. She hung up the phone. She placed the receiver back on the cradle with a soft click. The red flashing light from the office still pulsed against the pale walls. It no longer held any power over her. She had taken back control of her identity. She had taken back her hard-earned independence. The urgent scenario was a complete fabrication. Yet, as she looked at the physical card, she knew the fight was not entirely over. The scammers were still out there. They were sending their aggressive messages to others. She needed to make sure this fabricated lie was officially recorded. She turned away from the kitchen counter. Her mind shifted toward the next necessary step. The digital threat was exposed. The real work of reporting the scam was just beginning.
Julia turned away from the kitchen counter and walked back into the quiet home office. The laptop screen was still flashing its aggressive demands, trying to force one last moment of panic. She reached forward and closed the lid with a firm, satisfying click. The harsh artificial light vanished instantly, leaving the room in the gentle, golden glow of the late afternoon sun. The digital trap was finally silenced. She grabbed her light coat and her purse, feeling a deep sense of calm wash over her tired shoulders. The urgent scenario was a complete fabrication, but the real work was just beginning. She needed to make sure this fabricated lie was officially recorded to protect others in her community. A short drive later, Julia walked into the quiet, familiar lobby of the local police station. The officer at the front desk greeted her with a warm, respectful smile. He guided her to a comfortable chair and handed her a simple incident report form. Julia explained the aggressive email, the heavy pressure, and the strange visual clue that had stopped her from making a terrible mistake. She opened her purse and pulled out her phone, showing the officer a clear photograph she had taken of the sender profile picture. The officer leaned in, examining the small, impossible dark mark on the flat digital badge. He nodded slowly, his expression filled with quiet respect. He confirmed that the strange visual anomaly was a known scam tactic designed to rush people into making careless errors. Julia signed the final page of the report, handing it back with a profound sense of relief. The lingering tension from the morning completely dissolved into quiet pride. She walked out of the station and into the warm, golden sunlight of the Jacksonville afternoon. The gentle breeze brushed against her face as she strolled toward her car. The drive home felt remarkably peaceful. When she finally opened the front door, the house was exactly as she had left it, filled with the soft, familiar scent of Ethan's old paperbacks and the faint aroma of the garden tomatoes Carter had brought over. Ethan was still in his worn armchair by the large window, the late afternoon light catching the silver in his hair. He looked up and offered a gentle, knowing smile, asking no questions, because he already understood the outcome. Julia picked up her empty ceramic coffee mug from the wooden side table. The smooth surface felt incredibly grounding against her palm. She rinsed it in the kitchen sink, letting the simple, ordinary motion anchor her completely to the physical world. She placed her physical bank card carefully back into her leather wallet, the raised numbers serving as a solid reminder of her careful awareness. Sitting on the edge of the floral sofa, she listened to the peaceful rustle of the oak leaves outside. The digital storm was entirely over, leaving behind a profound stillness. She took a slow, deep breath, letting the last remnants of the artificial urgency fade away. Her independence remained perfectly intact, protected by her own calm mind.